This gentleman has been in testing for almost 20 years, started in waterfall environments and moved to Agile 10 years ago. He has worked in a variety of industries from startups and multinationals. His interest in how the use of Agile has freed the role of the tester and made it more integral to the whole development life cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, from SixWorks UK, Mr. Kelvin Harris. Over to you.
Thanks. Oh, that's a long walk. Hello, everyone. Oh, and here I am. Hello. Yeah, I am Kevin Harris, that is me. And I am talking today about the new Test Manager Survival Guide. I am QA manager. I work for a company called SixWorks. As you can see, SixWorks is an IBM company. From about 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago when I wrote this, it wasn't, and then we got taken over. So I now work for IBM, which is very exciting. SixWorks is actually a startup, but we've just been taken over. So interesting days at the moment. This is my history. This is how I got to be a test manager. As you can see, it's long and varied. I have been testing for quite a while. If you don't like animals, this talk isn't for you. There's a few dotted around. So this is me. Started off, actually went straight in as a UAT test team leader. There's a reason for that. It was a very old project. We had different departments. Each department had their own person put forward. And this is the days of the 1990s, this was. And we actually had long specification documents. And I'm talking hundreds of pages each. So we had 13 different departments, 13 different specification documents, all of over 100 pages. I got made team lead because I was the only one who read them all. Everybody else just read theirs, and I kind of realized in order to know how the system worked, you had to know how everything worked. So I read all of them, and they made me team lead. And as you can see, lots of different roles, up and down, all the way through. The last 3 roles have all been test manager of some format, and the last 3 roles have all been hands-off, no actual testing. My testers don't let me test anything anymore for some reason, but for the first 20 years of these roles, I was hands-on. So here's the question. Why would you want to be a test manager? It seems a natural progression if you want to move on and you're just testing now, so where do you want to get to? So why would you want to be a test manager? Here are some bad reasons for wanting to become a test manager. Number 1, you're bored of testing things. This is not a good reason for becoming a test manager. Number 2, you're fed up of people telling you what to do. Again, not a good reason. Number 3, you think you know better than everybody else. This is not a good reason for becoming a test manager. Number 4, you have an insane need for power. Again, not a good reason for becoming a test manager. Number 5, you want more money. Again, it's not the perfect reason for becoming a test manager. So, why did I become a test manager? Quite simple. Number 1, I was bored of testing things. You see where this is going? Number 2, I was fed up of people telling me what to do. Number 3, I thought I knew better than everybody else. Number 4, I had an insane need for power. Number 5, I wanted more money. But really, there was a frustration. I wasn't getting to make any decisions. I wasn't in the room when the decisions were made. And that's where I felt I was missing out. I wanted to influence what we did, how we did it. And I was getting a little bit frustrated and not being challenged by the actual day-to-day testing. And a little bit more money, that would be fine. I am going to have to pour some water. Hang on a second. Think about this while I'm doing this. This is not an obvious question. It is not straightforward. I will tell you why as soon as I've got some water. So I have been a test manager multiple times. I've interviewed for other roles as well. Every single one of those test manager roles has been different from all of the other ones. There is no single role that is test manager, and you know exactly what it is. They are all different. Every single company. So what are your options? What does test manager actually mean? And it can mean multiple things. My last role was definitely setting things up. I walked into a company that had no test department whatsoever. I was the first permanent tester. My job was to set up the test department from scratch. A previous role had a test department. Basically, I was moving in just to take on an existing department. So do you want to set things up, or do you want something a bit more stable so you can actually kind of work out what you want to be doing day to day rather than just have to do everything? So you might think, what's the difference there? What's the difference between a manager and a leader? A manager, I think, and everybody's going to have different opinions. A manager is somebody who just kind of manages the work. Work comes in, you say, right, I need to get rid of that piece of work for that. Those people can do that. This piece of work, I'll manage it that way. Leader is more about actually, it's the people you're dealing with and not the work. So are you a people person, or you're more interested in the work side? Is the testing, do you still have an interest in the testing? Do you want to see how the testing is done? Is it the people? Or is it the actual process? We haven't mentioned process before, but process is a fundamental part of the kind of the test manager role. Box ticker or disruptor. So a box ticker is somebody who will just say, somebody will come to you and say, right, I need this piece of testing done, I need it done this way, and you'll say, yep, we'll do that, absolutely fine. Or a disruptor is somebody, they'll come to you and say, I need this piece of testing done, I need it done in this way, and you'll say, why on earth are you doing it that way? There's a better way of doing it. These are different things you can do. I am a disruptor. I go into companies and I basically turn their testing on the head. So I went into banking. Banking is a very old-fashioned business in the UK for testing. And because I'd worked in other companies, I knew they were out of date. So I went in, I was expected to do it one way, and I didn't. I changed pretty much everything when I moved in there. But you need to work out who you are. Do you want to be doing that? Do you want to be changing things, or do you want to have it as it is and just keep it nice and steady? But these are internal decisions for you. Some of the companies I've worked for, the QA manager has actually been on the senior leadership team of a department. So I worked for a small startup. I reported to the CEO. I was on the senior leadership team for the engineering department. I got to be a part of those decisions as well. Is that something you would be comfortable with? Making those day-to-day decisions about how the engineering, how the development is done for your entire company. So you need to be thinking about all of these things if you're looking for a role in test management. And finally, do you actually want to do any testing anymore? My first couple of test manager roles were pretty much 80% hands-on testing. My last 3 have been no testing whatsoever. So if you still enjoy testing, do you want to be a test manager? Is that the route for you? Again, lots of things for you to be thinking about if you're looking to move into a more managerial role. Right, here's a question. I don't know how to phrase this because a lot of you here will be paid for by your companies. So I don't want to come in and tell you if you want to be a test manager, maybe you need to move companies. But just to say, if you want to be a test manager, you may need to move companies. If there are 10 of you testers in your company and 1 test manager, not all 10 of you will be able to become the test manager in that company. So actually, can you progress in your current company, or do you have to think wider? Do you have to look at other companies, other industries, in order to get that role? And here's another question. We've talked about all these different options for being a test manager. Trying to get to that test manager level is not easy. If you look through test manager roles that are advertised, a lot of them will say we need this amount of experience. If you have no experience, how are you going to get there? Some might say we want a senior person who wants to step up. So that could be you, but that could be an industry or a company or a way of working that you're not actually that good at or don't want to do. But do you need to take the role first in order to be able to move up and into that role for the first time? Are you willing to do that? It isn't a question of just doing it for 3 months and then moving on. You're going to be needing to be there for like 2 or 3 years, trying to kind of get that first role under your belt. So you have all of these decisions that you have to make. So, do you have to stay in the same industry? I don't think you do. Some people think that actually if you've been in one industry, you have to stay in that industry all of your career. Or if you want to be a test manager, you have to be in that same industry again because you bring all that industry knowledge. I don't think that's true. I think as testers, the skills we have should be able to transform into any other industry. I'm not just saying that, I can back that up. You might remember this, you might remember the raccoon. These are my roles, my previous roles from my 9 companies. These are the industries. You're going to notice one thing probably, they're all different. Every single one of them is different. This wasn't on purpose. I didn't say, right, I'm going to go into a different industry now. I'm fed up with that one. It's all kind of happened that way. But it's worked out, I think, better than if I'd stayed in the same industry. Every one of those industries has taught me something different. So when I've moved into a new industry, I've been able to take all of that experience from those other industries and looked at different ways of doing things. Especially if you're looking in some of these very fixed industries like banking. If you go into banking industry and see the testers there, a lot of those testers have only ever worked in banking, and all they know is how they've always done it in banking. So if you go in and you have a different mindset, if you've worked in different industries, and I have worked, as you can see, in multiple industries, and the companies I've worked at have been a mixture of startups to multinationals. Actually, the current role was a startup, is now a multinational. But I've brought all of that stuff in to every single role. So every time I've moved roles, I've brought new experience, new ways of working, and a new attitude often into those new industries. And I think that's made me a better test manager. So if you think you have to stay in the same industry, you do not need to stay in the same industry. I would actually advise moving on, not too often, because then you get a reputation. But you definitely do not need to know the same industry for all your career. I would actually advise against it. So you've got the job. First day in, you've got all of these ideas. What should you do on your first day in your new role as a test manager for a new company? Nothing. Don't do anything. With all the ideas you've got, that's your ideas. That doesn't mean anything to this company, at least not yet. That's how I feel most days, just to say. But take it slow. You need to find out things before you actually start implementing anything new. So find out everything you can. And I mean everything that you can. Find out about your testers, find out about the testing they do, find out about the department, the industry, if you've changed industry, the teams, the processes, the actual work, how it all hangs together. You need to know these things before you can start changing things. I put that second bit in just because when I went into the banking one, just to say it was a big change for me. I'd been a senior tester, the previous role, and I moved into a test management role. So basically, Friday, senior tester, following Monday, test manager. I went from no responsibility on the Friday to, on the Monday, I had a team of 53 testers. Obviously, huge change. 53 testers in 5 different teams, each of those teams with 5 different, with a manager each, so 5 different managers. And somebody told me, they said, right, these are the teams. Team A, really good, never had any complaints about Team A, don't worry about them. Team E, we don't hear anything about those, worry about those, there's obviously something going on, find out what it is, fix it. So that was the advice given by my manager when I joined this company. So I went exploring. I went to find out how all these teams worked. Team E, absolutely fine. They were kind of handled in a different way, but the person who did it knew what he was doing, knew what he was trying to do. I had no problem with Team E. Team A, the brilliant team, who had no complaints, weren't quite what I was expecting. I'll tell you why. So this was banking, so it wasn't weekly releases, it was quarterly releases every 3 months. And as I got there, they were just releasing some new software, and it had 39 stories in it, this release. They called them stories, but they weren't, they were mostly bugs. But there was a huge process for banking, so they got turned into stories with big specs, and it was all awful. So 39 stories, and I looked at the testing for those 39 stories. The example I'll give is there was a form that had 1 line in it, and the line had a spelling mistake and a punctuation mistake in it. And so they had to test that. And I was looking for the test results, and I was expecting like 1 page, here's the form, we've tested it this way, this way, this way, it's all fine. Here's a screenshot just showing that line, all good. That's what I was expecting. I know, right, who wants to guess how much test evidence I found? I was looking for 1 page. I found over 600 pages of test evidence for this 1 sentence correction. The reason that nobody was complaining about what they were doing is because nobody was reading it. Nobody had a clue what they were actually doing. So what they were doing was that they were going through, testing everything, producing a screenshot of every single screen, and then just submitting all of that information. 600 pages of screenshots, and they didn't even tell you what page the error was on. So in order to find out if they'd actually fixed the error, to look at the evidence, you had to go through every single one of the 600 pages to try and find out where this form was in order to find the difference. And I was told that was the good team. 39 stories in this release, 42,000 pages of test evidence. 99% of that I would say was useless, but that was what I was told would be the good things. This is where disruption comes in. I made it my goal to reduce that by 95%. I think I got it down by about 80% before I left that company, but you really do have to make up your own minds, find out the evidence yourself, do not believe people, take their advice, but then go away and check. So when you start, if you have testers under you, then you should be booking in regular meetings. I mean weekly meetings. Don't have to be long, 30 minutes every week with all of your testers, unless you have 53, in which case maybe just the leads, which is what I did. And it is basically a catch-up. First part of that is actually how are you, not how's the work. How are you? How are you doing? How are the kids? How's the dog? How was the holiday? How are you feeling? And then, if you want to, start talking about the work, but actually talk to the people you actually deal with day to day. Find out about them. And do the same with your line manager. Make sure you have a weekly meeting with your line manager as well. Because you need to be communicating with these people, and you need to be trusting these people, and they need to trust you. If you only tell them something like every month, send them a memo, that's not good enough. You need to be building up this rapport with all of these people. What are you actually meant to be drinking? Lots of water is what it's meant to be doing. Right, what are you doing? So, everybody will have an opinion of what your job is and what you should be doing. One person will know what the actual thing is you should be doing, and that's the person who knows the work best. That person needs to be you. So you have to get that information. You have to know how your company works, how the work comes into your teams, how your teams are actually doing their testing. You need all this information so you can make the right decisions. When you first start, make a list. List everything you think you need to do, everything that needs to be improved, everything that is missing. Prioritize that list. This is the most important thing. We have to do this right now. Talk to people. So talk to your manager, talk to the testers, talk to your stakeholders. Say, right, these are the things I want to do, because they'll have opinions. They'll actually be able to say, this thing that's number 3 on your list, we don't need that. We're replacing that in 2 months. Don't worry about it, and you can change. So listen to that feedback. Be willing to talk it through. Be willing and able to justify what you're saying, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Most importantly, in a month's time, that's out of date. This is your starter for TED. You know that as soon as you get going, these things will change, and they will change constantly. This has to be fluid. This has to be live. So make that list, prioritize it, get that first initial idea of what you need to do, but it is just a first initial idea. It will be out of date in a month's time. You should not be writing anything in stone saying, this is my plan for the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Doesn't work. Make a plan, know that it is going to change, and it is going to change quickly. Test manager, what are you responsible for? This. And this isn't everything. If you've gone for being a tester, or a senior tester, or possibly even a team lead, you probably haven't had to do any of these things. Overnight, this is your responsibility. Every single thing on this list you should be looking at, thinking about, and being in control of. This is your life now. This is why you might actually want to think up giving up testing, because there's a lot of things you have to cover now. I think in my current role, starting up a test team from scratch, I do have to cover all of these things, and there is more. It's not the easiest job, but it is the most rewarding job. I'm not trying to put you off, by the way. But there's a lot to do and a lot you need to think about. You don't have to do it all at once, as I said, but you need to be aware of all of these things that you need to be doing as part of your job. This is the key. Personally, I think this is the key role for any tester at any level. The ability to communicate well with the right people at the right time is the most important thing for any tester, especially now, in the ways of working that we do. 20 years ago when I first started, wasn't as important. Now I think it is key, and key to every single role, test manager especially, because you are dealing not just with your testers and your line manager. You need to be able to communicate with everybody in the company. People will have questions from all over the place, up to board level. People at board level will be asking you questions about how you're testing things. So you need to be able to communicate, and in the right way. It's not just a conversation. It could be an email. It could be writing process documents. In the past, for some of the companies where I've introduced new ideas, I've written blogs, internal blogs for the company. It could be doing presentations. And I certainly did that in the company I joined last year. Without a test team, I went in, and a couple of months after I kind of worked out what was going on, I did a presentation for the entire company saying about what testing was going to bring and the types of ways of testing I was hoping to bring into the company. So communication, absolutely key. Find out who your stakeholders are, and they will be pretty much everybody in the company. And you need to be able to talk, communicate, write messages, emails, team chat, anything you need to, but you need to be able to communicate. I talked about moving to the banking company from being a senior tester. So to put that into perspective, on the Friday I had no budget. On the Monday I had a budget of about $5 million, I guess, just for testing. It's a big step up. Responsible for $5 million worth of testing every year. I did not worry about it. I would suggest you do not worry about it either. All you need to consider is, what testing do I need to do? What people does that mean I need to employ? And then you'll be told either we can afford it or we can't afford it. You need to know the reasons behind why you want the money, not whether you can have the money or not. So make the decisions, find the information, say I need a tester for this, give the business reason for it, show what the benefits are, show you what the value is, but don't worry about the actual money behind it. Let somebody else worry about that. If things go wrong and it's because you didn't have enough testers, you could just say, I told you so at the end of the day. This is an interesting question, which is, do you actually know how to test stuff in order to be a test manager? And I have worked in companies where test managers were actually just managing the testers. And it was a disaster. So, of course you need to know about testing. If you have a company and your test manager does not know about testing, I would worry about that company. You have multiple roles as a test manager, as we saw on the previous slide. One of them is actually about the people you're dealing with and their careers. If you don't know about testing, how can you help people with their careers? If you don't know about testing, how can you actually understand what the teams are doing? How can you look to see how they do it better in the future? You need to know about testing. You need to have a good knowledge of testing. So even if you got to test manager level, that doesn't mean you stop learning about testing. This is why I don't think a test manager is somebody who manages testing. Not anymore, it shouldn't be. Your role should be making the testing better. It isn't just a question of, we've always tested that way, let's keep testing that way. That's not good enough anymore for a test manager role, or basically for any tester role. You shouldn't be doing the same thing just because you did it last week. So look at what your team is doing now. Think about how they do it better next time. And even if you're still just testing, say just, if you're testing, if you're a senior tester, your job shouldn't be to test. It should be to test, look at how you test, see how you do it better next time. For a test manager role, you should be doing that across all of your teams across the company. How do we learn from what we did? How do we make things better? We can't stay still anymore. We have to keep improving. As we've seen in the talks already, things change. Things change fast. You cannot just sit there and think, we'll just do it like we did last year. You have to keep improving. You have to keep looking at that. So your job is to help your teams get better at testing. It isn't just to manage the testing. It's to get it done better next time. It's all about learning. It's why if you go onto the agile side of it, we have a retrospective every couple of weeks. It's so we can learn from what we've just done and make it better. This role isn't any different. You should be looking at what you're doing and looking to see how you do it better next time, continuously. I'll let you think about that. So I've been wittering on about how important it is to know about testing. As a test manager, it's been important. but actually knowing how we do testing, how testing works within the company, within the teams, what the process is for the work coming in and moving through has been more important to me in my 3 roles as a test manager than knowing about testing. Basically, I can rely on my testers to do the testing. But this side of it, the process side of it, actually, I've ended up being the expert. And sometimes I've been the expert across the entire company. I've gone into companies that have had no experience of Agile, no experience of Agile ways of working. Or at least very limited. So these companies do not know how we test now. They still look at testing as that's the bit that happens at the end. Hopefully, we should all agree now testing isn't the bit that happens at the end. But telling your companies about the new processes, understanding that, showing them the value of having the testers there right from the very start, in that very first meeting when the requirements come in, that's been key to me in my roles. So my knowledge of process, of Agile, all those aspects has been more important than my knowledge of testing. Actually, maybe it's not about the testing, maybe it's not about the process. Maybe it is just about the people at the end of the day. So if you kind of move from senior manager or just a tester, from senior tester or tester to test management, you are now responsible for hiring testers. Maybe you haven't done that before. I think it's key, really. You have to have people in these roles that you can trust, that you can build up. I don't care about the level of somebody when they come in. I care about their aptitude. I don't look for these are the years of experience or these are the tools I can do. I look at the people themselves. I want to know about the people. I want to know I can work with those people and they want to learn. And they have a passion for testing. So I have to be hiring the right people. So don't hire people who test just like you do, because then you get a whole team of people who will do exactly the same testing every single time. Nothing improves. You get no new ideas. You want to be looking at different ideas, different people, different backgrounds, different experiences, different industries. And you need to have them as a team that work together and all bring ideas in. For me, it doesn't matter if I've got somebody who's a graduate or somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years. I want to hear from both of them because they will have a different perspective. The very first person I interviewed, which was 17 years ago, I had a test. It was a fairly straightforward one. It was like a spec and then a printout of a screen saying what was wrong, what would you test, how would you do it. And I went through the answers with this person, and they got every single one wrong. Every single question I asked, they got wrong, and I hired him. I hired him because he explained what he was thinking about. He hadn't had a lot of experience. He didn't have that industry knowledge, but he could explain exactly what he was doing for every single one of those questions and why he'd come up with the wrong answer. And the reasons why he'd come up with the wrong answer were all good reasons. He just didn't know any better. So I knew we could bring him in, we could teach him those things, and I knew he had the aptitude, the intelligence, and the passion for what we were doing to be able to come in. So it wasn't about come in, do the tests, have to get this amount of numbers right in the test. He got everything, I mean literally he got everything wrong, and I hired him that day. So you're looking for a team of people. Diverse in every way you can think of. The other thing about hiring is you need to tell the people about what they would be coming into. You need to tell them about the role, the company, the type of work you do. It's no good hiring somebody, them coming in, and then 2 months later saying, I didn't know it was going to be like this, and leaving, and you have to hire new people. So you need to be honest in the interview. You need to tell them about what you do, how you do it, what you expect from them. Because it's equally about the fit for that person with your company as it is the company with that person. You're not just hiring the best people, you're hiring the best people to work in your company, and it has to work for them too. So be open, be honest, talk about your company, talk about how you work, And it could be that actually you know things are bad, tell them it's bad, tell them what you're trying to do about it. I've hired 2 people in this new role as I've set up this department. And both of them, I've been honest with them. And both of them have joined. And the thing I've stressed to those people is, I know it's not perfect, but that's the reason I hired you. I hired you because you will help make it better. And that's really important. I think it's really important to them as well to know that they are there because I trust them. I trust them to come in, work with this company, and improve it. But that's the kind of level of communication and honesty you need to have. The second tester I ever hired, the first one got every question wrong. The second question had been a test manager for 10 years previous to joining my team. And the role they were applying for was not a test manager role. They'd actually decided to step back a bit. I didn't want to do that anymore. But they had way more experience in that role than I'd had at that point. But I hired them as well. I knew they were better testers than me. That didn't matter. It was the right person, right job, and I knew they would bring more things into the company than I could do. So don't be afraid to hire better testers than you. That's not your job, is to worry about people stepping up and taking your role. It's to get the people in, hire the good people, and you're actually building a team. That's your job, is to build a good team of good testers who will work with you. So don't be afraid to hire really good people. And your chief responsibility is to your testers. It really is. So have those meetings, talk to them, understand where they're coming from, understand their difficulties. Don't pry if that's not what they want, but if they want to talk about things, you should be talking about things. If they're having difficulties, it helps when you can actually understand that and deal with that, rather than notice their work's going downhill and not know why, and then get into other unpleasant ways of dealing with it. You want to understand your people, your staff, and you want them to trust you as well. So it needs to be open, honest, two-way conversations. And again, they shouldn't be testers like you were a tester. Everybody's going to come in with a different experience, different background, different ways of working. So when they come in, don't say, right, this is how I tested, so I expect you to test. That's the wrong way forward, because they are different people. They are never going to test like you did. So find out how they test and help them improve that. Help them move forward in their own ways, in their own areas of expertise. Whatever ways they want to go, move forwards. You should be helping them do that, not trying to produce more clones of yourself. And possibly most important is learn how to delegate. Especially when you start getting bigger teams, you want to be able to move some of the responsibility down. It's also really important to build your testers up. So the testers I've got at the moment had never interviewed anybody before. So one of the things I've made sure recently is I've introduced them to the interview process. So the idea is that at some point I can step back and they can interview people by themselves. At the moment they are just kind of starting out. But I also want them to move up to a senior test level. And a senior test level, I expect them to be able to interview people. So I'm giving them those additional responsibilities, talking it over with them. So I'm not just saying, right, you've got to start interviewing people. Have the conversation, ensure they're comfortable with that. I actually gave them a training session on interviewing people first. And we talked about it, and then kind of brought them in slowly. So the first one was basically they sat in the background and asked a couple of questions, and that was it. And they're kind of building up their familiarity with that. But you need to be delegating these things, training people up as well, and not afraid to move even quite chunky piece of work, important piece of work, over to members of your staff. So it is about helping them with their careers, basically. If your testers realize you're actually there to help them with their careers, help them move forward, they will probably stay with you longer. They won't be as willing to kind of move for the next best thing if they know that you're there trying to provide the next best thing for them as much as you can within your current situation. And that might mean you actually get them to the stage where they want to leave because they want the next step up. Maybe they want to become a test manager. And the only reason if you're in that company and there's one test manager and it's you probably want them to move on rather than become a test manager, because that means you haven't got a job anymore. So you should be happy if they can move on, if they are moving up, if they are improving their life, because that's something you've given them. You've helped them get there. You're helping them move on with their career and their lives. So I said at the start, it's not about the company, the testing, the process, it is about the people. Because if the people trust you and they know you're there for them and building them up and helping them move forwards, and you don't mind, you're not going to try and keep them at all costs, then I think you'll have a better understanding and they'll trust you more and they'll do more for you. I've made it sound like there's a lot to do, and it's quite tricky. It's not as bad as all that. The thing to remember is if you move into a test management role and you start as a test manager, that's because somebody somewhere believed you were the best person for that role. So if you are a test manager and you're new to it, believe in yourself like somebody else believed in you. You are the best person in that role at that time. You will be able to bring your knowledge, your experience, your ideas into that role. And help is available all over the place. The one thing I've found the last few years is how good the test community is. So anytime you kind of go online, if you look at Twitter, you look at people's blogs, you look at LinkedIn, there are people there who are willing to answer questions, who will give you the time if you have questions, if you have areas that you're not experienced in. If you put questions out there, people will answer and people will give good advice. It's one of the reasons I think conferences like this are good, because you're networking with people. You'll meet people who are in a similar situation to you, other people who are wanting to become test managers. You'll meet the speakers, the organizers, and we will all be there if you have questions. So if you come away from this and you have questions in a week's time, I'll give you my details. Please send me a message. Please send me a question. Please send other people a question. Reach out into the network, because there's a lot of people there who really are there to try and help and are there to encourage, not just in your own company, but across the world. The testing community is an excellent community to do that. So don't be afraid. There are people out there and they will help you. And that is it. And I think we probably have time for questions. And those are the details. Please do contact me if you have any questions, you want advice, you want to tell me about things I got wrong today, you want to ask about anything I said that's slightly too English, let me know. Do we have any questions? We have questions. Oh, man in the back first. We made sure you were furthest away from the microphone.
How far?
Yeah.
Great, good. Hi, Kevin. I'm Casper.
Hi.
I'm from EZP. So I have a question for you. As a manager or as a leader, how do you know those under you? Or let me rephrase it. How do you identify potential leaders or managers? Because a manager has the ability to know if someone has the right stuff in them.
Yes, good question. I think the best place is if you've hired them in the first place. If you've hired them, you've known what their potential is and you can help them move forwards. The thing I've found is that everybody I've hired has some kind of potential. It may not be for management, it might be for something different. It might be something more senior, it might be they might want to go into security, performance, something like that. But everybody has their own potential, and they'll also have their own ideas of where they want to go to. So it's a question of having those open conversations with them. And also being honest. So maybe they want to be a test manager in 2 years and you don't think they can do that. So talk about what they can do. I don't want to sell my own thing, but tomorrow I'm doing a workshop which is about kind of future-proofing your career. And part of that is kind of looking at how you improve. So it's about how you talk to those people, how you help them with their own training, about their own motivation, and being honest with them about where they can get to and trying to support all of their ideas. Because actually, they know better than you do about where they're going to get. If they've got that passion, then you should be able to support those areas. So always talk to the people you're dealing with. Find out what they want to do. So you don't want to push somebody into a management role or a leadership role if they don't want to go there. So you have to find out what they like, how they want to work, what their goals are, and then work with them on their own goals and come up with a plan as to how they can move forward, whether that's training, whether that's delegating more things, as I was saying about getting people involved in the interviewing, whether they hadn't done that before. So that I'm looking at the next role up for them and looking at the aspects that we can go through to kind of get them there and trying to knock those off at least one at a time, but at least have a plan to move forward and improve what they do, whether that's the soft side or maybe the technical side, but that's up to the individual. Okay, thank you. That was a much shorter
Kevin.
walk. Hello.
Okay, I'm Gauri from RHB Bank. How do you, from your experience, right, how do you kill the mindset of people that doesn't want to take additional responsibility apart from their job scope? So they go by the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go by their book, they go by their role, but they don't want to be open to adding up additional tasks, which actually leads them to the career path. But how do you kill that mindset?
It's a good question. So, again, I probably wouldn't have hired them in the first place, to be honest. But I have moved into companies where I've kind of taken on people like that. And I think you have to be, as I was saying, open and honest, and explain that if they do want to improve, if they do want to move forwards, then there are things they will have to do and take on. And it will be a question of showing that if they take these things on, first of all, I will support them. Anything additional, I won't just say, do that, go away when you've done it. It will be, go away, start looking at that, any questions, or... So one of the things I'm doing at the moment with a couple of people is I'm putting in weekly meetings about specific things. So not just a general catch-up, but about specific areas they're working on, and we're going through those together. So I'm supporting them in those ways forwards. If they don't want to take those things on, that's fine, but they're not going to move in that direction. So I think you just have to make it really clear. If they want the next steps, then they do have to work for them. One of the other things you can do is put some kind of matrix together showing, like, that's a standard tester role, that's a senior role, these are the things I expect for that role, these are the things I expect you to be doing as a senior role. And if you're not doing them, then you won't be getting the senior role. It doesn't matter if it's not based on length of time in a job, it's about what you can do. So I think as long as you make that clear and you have that open communication, I think the worst thing you can do is have some kind of annual assessment, they get to that and then they expect it because you haven't talked about it all year through. You should be talking about people's career all throughout the year. I don't hold with this 1 year assessment type thing. I think that's old-fashioned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Is my voice audible? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Shahira. So I want more on the advice, because honestly, I'm just like start my as a QA path just like nearly 3 years. So some people are telling me that I really good in the management, so I should more to be a QA lead. But personally, I think I want to improve my QA skills more. I do admit that I think I can do the lead things, management things. So what is your advice to me, personally? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think my personal advice is you decide what's best for you. If that's definitely what you want, if you're the way you're feeling, you want to improve your QA side, then you should be doing that. You should be looking at how you do that. Maybe that's expanding the breadth of your testing. Maybe that's kind of getting deeper into various areas. The one thing I would say is there a reason that you don't want to kind of move in the QA lead and QA manager role? And for some people, that might be actually they're a bit scared of those roles. In which case, you need to look at that side of it. But if it's actually a case of that's not what I like doing, that's not the areas that I'm interested in, then don't go there. It doesn't matter what other people think. Well, it does matter what other people think, but the most important decision and the most important opinion is yours. So base it on your opinion and your thoughts as to where you want your career to go, not to what other people think you should do. But yeah, make your own choice, but understand why you're making that choice. Just to say, I talk at conferences because a previous manager thought it would be good for my confidence. So, and it's one of the things I do to challenge myself. So I had to get through that mental side of actually saying, I've been tested for 15 years, I've been actually happy, but actually this will challenge me, this will take me forwards. So that's why I started talking at conferences, just to kind of challenge myself more. So it might be you want to think about how you can challenge yourself and how you can try things out. So it might be actually you'd enjoy leadership. So maybe there's a way you can just try it, but not as a permanent thing. Maybe you say, well, I want to lead it on this single project, see how that suits you, because you might enjoy it. But you won't know until you've actually tried it. So it needs to be your decision, but make it an informed decision. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. A lady.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
I'm Hindu from Exec ADC.
Hi.
So my question to you is about, I believe while hearing about your career path, how did you get your team or the organization to agree to a change? Because usually people are afraid of change. And how did you measure your success from the change?
It's a good point. So I've worked in some companies that embrace change, and some companies, not mentioning that it was banking, but it was banking, that are very much against change. I'll give you an example. I was having to do the budget. I've talked about budget and why you don't have to think about it. They made us do budget every 6 months. And what it was a 7-tab Excel worksheet embedded in a 20-page Word document embedded in an email. And it was a nightmare. And this was being used throughout the entire company. And I hated it. It took days to get this thing through. At one point, I had to get this budget signed off. It took me 4 weeks. 23 people were involved. Over 100 emails, over 400 Teams messages before it got accepted, and it got accepted exactly the same way I'd sent it in the first place. So no change over that 4 times, but it took a lot of time. So I said I was a disruptor. I changed it. I got rid of the Word, got rid of the emails, got rid of most of the tabs, used like 1 page in Confluence just saying these are the things, put in Confluence with 1 page of Excel, and I sent it out and I got it signed off. Took 2 people, 2 emails, and 1 day. I didn't tell people I was doing it in advance, but getting it done, and what I could do was I could show the value. I'd gone from 4 weeks, 23 people, to less than a day, 2 people, and it had exactly the same, actually it was better because it was communicated better, but I could show the value. So I think that's what you need to do, is you need to be able to show the value of what you do. Irrespective of what you're changing, if you could say, I'm going to change it, but I'm changing it because of this reason. This is the value we'll get. This is the time we will save. This is the money we will save. This is how much quicker we will do it. If you can prove and the value behind what you're doing, then that goes a long way to be able to change things. So I would say look at the value. It's similar to what Rob was saying earlier about why you do things. The value is where it's at. So if you can show the value, that's what you should do.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Kevin. I'm Hadi from Salamut.
Hi.
So I have a question, like, what is your best advice for young leaders that had to manage a team and some of the team members are way older than you? Maybe like the seniors have a seniority problems. So what is your best advice for this situation?
Okay, well, obviously at the moment, nobody works for me who's way older than me. That would be nice. I think you've just got to make sure you're talking to them and ask for their advice. So don't impose things on people. That's never going to work. You need to be talking to people. If they've got more experience than you, then that's okay, that's good. That means they've got more knowledge they can bring to it. So maybe you should be asking them more things, asking their opinion in advance. Doesn't mean you have to follow their opinion or do what they say, but actually getting them involved, making sure they know they are being heard. I think that would be the best first step. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Getki. So I remember just now the previous slides, you mentioned briefly that it is not good to keep staying in that particular industry. Can I know the reason why? And I would also like to know how can you go back to the previous slides where you where you show your
It's going to be a while. Oh, no, still going.
Yeah, this one. How would you use your testing knowledge in, let's say, medical, in airlines, or how do you relate the knowledge you gain from one industry to another, for examples?
I think it's a fundamental that a good tester can test on any application. I think there's the tooling, there's the kind of knowledge of the industry, but actually, if you've got a set of requirements and something's put in front of you, you should be able to work out how to test it. Maybe not exactly the things behind it. So I don't think that aspect of it has been the issue, because I've always been good at moving into a company and learning about the company quickly, learning what they do in the industry. What I've learned from the previous companies isn't industry specific, it's actually been about the process behind it, what they've done well, and actually, equally as important, what they've done badly. So half of those companies I've said, I would say have been pretty good, 2 or 3 of those were awful. So there's a couple there that I've only worked for about a year because they did things really badly. But I learned as much from those companies as I did from the companies that did it really well. So then you find out what works well, what doesn't work well, what you should be avoiding. I mean, how you treat people, how you talk to people. I've worked in companies where people aren't respected or talked to or have those conversations, which is why I always make sure that I do that now, because I've been in situations where that hasn't been. So it's been less about the industry and more about the process behind it. You do also learn from the makeup of the company. So I learned a lot from startups that I then took into bigger corporations. That's what I did with the banking. I'd gone from a communications company that had been a startup. When I joined that, the communications company, I was the only permanent member of staff. When I left, there was 20 permanent testers. We built that up over a considerable amount of time. They were the most mature, agile company I'd ever worked for, and I was a part of actually building that. So when I went into banking were about 20 years behind how I'd worked before. So I could bring a lot of those specifics about how you worked, not about the industry, but how you worked in a startup and how you kind of improve things into a more old-fashioned company industry like banking. So it's been less about the industry, it's more about the companies, how they worked, the good things and the negative things about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's about time. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to Mr. Kevin Harris.
Thank you.